Hey, what's up, guys? This is Justin from LitTube, and let's get straight into it. No bullshit. It's the Washington Redskins 2017 Fantasy Football Outlook video. Going to be breaking down quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, and defense. So let's get started.
All right, so let's start by talking about Kirk Cousins, quarterback for the Washington Redskins. Here's a guy that I'm going to go on record and say he's an elite quarterback. And, he's one of those guys that the fantasy football community is just now starting to pick up on. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe this guy should be factored in as one of the top tier QBs, or at least in the tier below those top tier quarterbacks. I mean, last year he finished as the fifth best quarterback. The year before that, he was pretty good as well. So this is a guy that has a lot of potential. He's in the prime of his career, really. I mean, he's going to be 29 this season. But he profiles as a pocket passer. He's got 90th percentile throw velocity, clocks in at 59 miles per hour. So this guy can sling the rock. He's not a great athlete. He's not mobile. But despite that, he still finds a way to get rushing scores. He actually ranks third over the past 2 years in rushing touchdowns at the quarterback position. Last year, he had 4,915 passing yards. Would have liked to see him get more passing touchdowns. I think that's an area where you can look for him to improve this year. Now, you ask yourself, okay, what really changes for Kirk Cousins going into this year? Well, he lost Pierre Garçon. He lost Deshaun Jackson, but the team added Terelle Pryor from Cleveland. So I think overall, you look at it, he's got Pryor, Crowder, Doctson, Jordan Reed. That's a lot of weapons. This Washington Redskins offense is going to be prolific, and Kirk Cousins is the field general. Again, I'm saying he's an elite quarterback. He's a guy I'm going to be targeting, particularly in leagues that reward more for passing yards and touchdowns and less for the rushing stats. But he's also going to get his rush TDs as well if the last couple of years are any indicator. So Kirk Cousins, a guy as far as fantasy is concerned, he's a guy you want to target. Once you start getting into the middle of your draft and need a quarterback, he's one of the stronger options for sure. Has top 5 upside as a fantasy quarterback. And worst case scenario, I mean, I don't see him being any worse than maybe like the 11th or 12th best quarterback. Worst case. Let's talk about the new addition to the receiving corps, Terelle Pryor. He comes over from Cleveland, and this is a guy that last year on the Browns was the 20th ranked wide receiver in PPR scoring. He had a handful of 100-yard games on the Browns. And you figure coming to Washington, the touchdown upside has to be higher, and the volume overall may be higher for him in this prolific offense. So I really like Terelle Pryor this year as at worst, a wide receiver 2, but I think he actually has the upside to be a low-end wide receiver 1 for this year in this offense. So he's really a guy that you want to start giving a look once it gets to the 4th or 5th round of your draft as a potential guy to add to your squad. So the thing about Pryor is that really stands out. This is a guy that played quarterback in college, and he was a converted to wide receiver about 2 years ago. Last year was his first full season playing as a wide receiver, so he's actually got some chances to improve as he learns more about that position at the NFL level. So the upside, is there. If he can even improve on his own skills and knowledge of the game from a receiver perspective, I mean, we already know what he was able to do last year on the Browns. So I really like things to come from this guy. He's 28 years old. No reason to think his skills are going to regress at this point. Runs a 4.41 40. That's 91st percentile. You size adjust it. You give him a size adjusted speed score of 99th percentile when you factor in his height and weight. So this guy's a burner. He's going to get down the field and he's going to make plays. Really exciting guy for this year, and he figures to be the number 1 option right out of the gate for the Washington Redskins passing attack. Jamison Crowder is another receiver in this Washington Redskins passing attack that I really like. He's not the most athletic receiver. His SparkX checks in at 95.3, which is 19th percentile among receivers. So you're thinking more like a Cole Beasley, a Willie Snead type of guy here. Not insanely athletic, but he does play that slot role really well. He's a guy that last year finished as the number 25 ranked receiver in PPR scoring. I actually had him in my standard league and was playing him as a wide receiver 2 when needed, and I actually ended up winning that league, not all because of Crowder, but he made a very serviceable fill-in at a wide receiver 2 spot for me in that league. So he definitely had a little mini breakout last year in his second season in the league. Things can only get better for Crowder going into this next year, with the fact that, you know, we're talking about another year of rapport with Kirk Cousins. We're talking about Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson being gone. They do bring in Pryor, but that's fine. This offense can sustain 2 really good receivers. So Crowder's a guy I like a lot. I think that his touchdowns could come down, though. He scored 7 last year, and you look at his size being a 5'8", 185-pound receiver, you just figure he doesn't have the frame to haul in 7 touchdowns again, and that seems like an aberration. But I think he comes up on the receptions and the yardage in a big way, and this is a guy that at the end of the year could actually end up finishing as like a high-end wide receiver too. Like, that's the kind of upside I think this guy has in this prolific Washington Redskins offense. So if I'm not getting Pryor on my team, then this is a guy I'm looking to draft a couple rounds later and play him as like a wide receiver 2 or a flex, regardless of format. I think he's going to be, when it's all said and done, a good draft pick for this upcoming fantasy season. Let's talk about the third receiver of consequence in this Washington Redskins passing attack. The only other Redskins receiver that's most likely going to end up getting drafted come fantasy football draft day, that would be Josh Doctson. So this guy last year, he only played 2 games, caught 1 ball in each game, and then ended up suffering an Achilles injury, and that was for his rookie campaign. So he essentially had the same kind of problem that Samaje Perine and Kevin White had their rookie year of just immediately getting hurt. At least this guy got to play 2 games instead of 0, but essentially that's going to set him back, the fact that he didn't play a full rookie season, so he still needs time to develop. But that doesn't mean he can't make an impact this year in fantasy. I mean, this offense can support 3 fantasy viable wideouts. And you look at Josh Doctson's athletic profile. First of all, he was very dominant coming out of college at Texas Christian University. He had a college dominator of 38.6, which is 75th percentile. College yards per reception, 16.8, 78th percentile. Breakout age, 18.8, 94th percentile among wide receivers. And his Spark X, 118.8, that's 86th percentile. He's got a 97th percentile burst score, 96th percentile catch radius. So this is a guy that checks all the boxes from a metric standpoint, and we just need to see more of him, really. He needs to see the field more, not get hurt, and we need to see what comes of him. But bottom line is, even though this guy did not play a full rookie season, he's worth a flyer this year in fantasy drafts. So, look, I'm telling you guys, you got to get a piece of this Washington Redskins receiving core. If you're not going to get Pryor, you're not going to get Crowder, then just use one of your last draft picks on Doctson, because it could end up paying off. All it would take is an injury to Pryor or an injury to Crowder, and Doctson is a lock to step up and make big plays. But even as the third option, I think he could be serviceable as a bye-week filler. I don't think that's out of the range of outcomes for this year for Josh Doctson. So I really like him as a late flyer, would definitely take him before a guy like Samaje Perine. I just have a better feeling about Doctson, and the offense is more prolific. So this is a guy that should be on your radar. And if no one ends up drafting this guy and he's sitting on waivers, monitor him, because you may end up needing to pick him up. All right, guys, I'm not going to spend too much time on Jordan Reed, the tight end, because we know what he is. He's finished as a top 10 tight end both of the past 2 seasons, despite missing 6 games over the course of the past 2 seasons. So this is a tight end that, when active and healthy, produces you big fantasy points. We're talking like Gronk-type numbers here. In some instances, even better than Gronk when he's healthy and active. But here's the thing about Jordan Reed, is that you're going to end up having to waste a 3rd or 4th round draft pick in order to land this guy on your fantasy team. That's most likely what's going to happen. And for me, I'm not going to do it just because He gets injured too much for my liking. I had him on one of my teams last year, was kind of disappointed because he was nicked up all the time, even though he did end up finishing as the 9th ranked receiver in PPR scoring last year. But Jordan Reed's a guy you have to pay a high price for, and he carries probably more injury risk than almost any other player I can think of. So he's a guy that I'm going to be avoiding unless he slips further than he should. But that's what he is. He's an elite tight end, but he's injury prone. And I also worry with his concussion history that, who knows, one or two more concussions and that could be the end of his career. Because we know how head injuries go these days in the NFL. This guy could have a career-ending injury next year, and I don't want to really speculate on that, and I don't want that to happen to him. But it's a realistic possibility just with the amount of concussions he's had and how injury-prone he is. So that's how I look at him. Again, he's going to most likely go in the 3rd or 4th round of your fantasy draft. That's a high price to pay for a tight end that gets nicked up. So my recommendation is, don't draft him unless he slips much further than he should. So guys, as of right now, we're not into preseason yet, but for right now anyway, Robert Kelley projects to be the lead back for the Washington Redskins in 2017. The thing about Rob Kelley, or Fat Rob as they like to call him on the team, is that he came onto the scene last year and was fairly productive. Overall, he finished as the 36th ranked running back in PPR scoring, but again, he didn't really get on the field till about 4 to 5 weeks into the season. So he was pretty good last year, and a player that really wasn't drafted in most fantasy drafts last year. But here's why I'm avoiding Rob Kelley in 2017. The metrics are not on this guy's side in any way, shape, or form. You look at his SparkX, 86.5, which is 2nd percentile. I want you to think about that. 2nd percentile. That means 98% of NFL running backs that are on record have better athleticism than Rob Kelley. Complete non-athlete. Now, he went to Tulane, same college as Matt Forte, but his college dominator, only 11.4%, 5th percentile. So he didn't account for much of his offense's production, and his yards per carry in college, only 3.6, which is one of the lowest figures on record yet again for a running back. So his metrics are horrendous. It just screams that he's not going to be able to match the production of last year for those reasons. And you take into account he has to battle now with rookie Samaje Perine for those early down duties. Honestly, we'll get into Samaje Perine in a minute, but for several reasons, I expect him to take over that lead back job by no later than mid-season. And on 3rd downs, they're probably going to be using Chris Thompson as the passing down specialist. So Rob Kelley, not a guy I'm going to be targeting in any of my drafts. I want no part of this guy. He's a bust for me. Moving on to the rookie Samaje Perine at the running back position. Samaje played for the Oklahoma Sooners. He split a backfield with Joe Mixon, who is also a very, very talented running back out of this year's draft class. So you look at his college production and you think, well, he was pretty productive in college, but really would have been much more productive if he wasn't sharing a backfield with the talented Joe Mixon. So I take that into account in my analysis of him. His SparkX score, 127.5, 88th percentile. So compare 88th percentile athleticism to Rob Kelley's 2nd percentile athleticism. You tell me who has the better chance of being the lead back in Washington come mid-season. I'm putting my money on the rookie. One of the other highlights for Samaje, 98th percentile on his bench press metric. He had 30 reps at the combine. And this guy has the size, too, because he's 5'11", 233 pounds. That's good for a 91st percentile body mass index score. So he's really just built to be that 2-down grinder. His one weakness, he doesn't do much in the receiving game. He was 14th percentile in terms of his college target share at the running back position. But he's not going to be a highly efficient receiver out of the backfield. They're going to use Chris Thompson for that, as I mentioned before. But this is a guy that is my favorite to take over the lead running back role away from Rob Kelley. At most, I think mid-season I would see this happening, but it could be sooner than that. Could even beat him out in training camp and preseason, to be quite honest with you. We've yet to see. But as of right now, if Samaje starts as the second on the depth chart at the beginning of regular season, he's going to go at a value in drafts. You can scoop him up late, and you have a potential starting running back. This guy is probably the most likely to be the Jordan Howard of this season. Out of all the rookie running backs, I think he's in a great situation to leapfrog the guy ahead of him on the depth chart and just completely run wild in this prolific Washington Redskins offense. So, particularly in standard formats, I'm going to be targeting Samaje Perine and trying to draft him late on in the draft. But even in PPR, where he's still, if he becomes a lead back in prolific offense, even without catches, he's going to knock boots and be great. Okay, guys, and just to wrap up this video, I'm going to touch on the defense and the kicker real quick for the Washington Redskins. So let's start with the defense special teams unit. For fantasy purposes, not draftable. Last year, they were the 25th ranked scoring defense in fantasy, and when you're that low on the totem pole, I mean, outside of deep leagues, the defense just isn't even worth drafting, so leave that one on the draft board. I mean, if the Redskins surprise with their defense, which I don't think is going to happen, but they're a team you can pick up off of waivers, maybe plug them in when they have a good matchup, but other than that, it's not a defense you want to be starting every week, I don't think. So that's the defense. The kicker, that projects as of right now to be Dustin Hopkins. He was the kicker last year. He was actually the third-ranked kicker in fantasy scoring, believe it or not. But he was not very efficient. He converted 81% of his field goals, but he attempted a league-high 42 field goals, and that's why he ended up finishing as a top-3 kicker in fantasy. So, if this guy ends up winning in the training camp battle, I'm assuming because of his inefficiency, they're going to bring in some of their kicker to compete with him in the preseason. But if he keeps his job, Dustin Hopkins is a guy you can draft as your starting fantasy kicker. No problem there. Doesn't matter that he's inefficient. There's going to be enough attempts like there was last year because of this prolific Redskins offense. And really, when it comes down to kickers, by and large, that's what you're doing, is just drafting the kickers from prolific offenses because you know they're going to get lots of point-after attempts and field goal attempts. So that's really what you're trying to do with the kicker. Dustin Hopkins would be a fine fantasy kicker for your team should he keep his job in Washington. So that covers the fantasy outlook for the 2017 Washington Redskins. Hope you liked this video. Make sure to like it and subscribe to LitTube channel. Check out our Instagram, our Twitter, our Facebook page. We got plenty of content for you coming up. This is just the beginning. 2017 is going to be a big football season for us. We're going to be doing a lot of fantasy videos, a lot of prediction videos. So stay tuned, and LitTube's going to keep your entertainment coming.